Okay, welcome everybody. I'm so glad to be with you today, and thank you for joining me. I have a guest today that I'm really excited about introducing you to, and we're going to have a great conversation about pricing. I know this is something that I talk to a lot of people about, and it's a struggle for a lot of us, me included. And so we have an expert here today with us. Her name is Marky Reed, and she is a pricing expert and seasoned business strategist who spent over 25 years helping women solopreneurs get paid what they're truly worth. So I'm really excited to have her here. And so, Marky, if you want to just give us a little bit of a fuller introduction, and we'll dive right in and talk about pricing strategy and all the things.
Sure. So thank you so much, Melissa. This is really fun. I always love talking to you. So, who am I? I'm Marky Reed. I've been in business. I'm in my 34th year of business. And I am really passionate about helping women not only create their business and build it, but grow and prosper within that. And that's why pricing is really central to that message. And that because um, not enough of us are charging what we're really worth, which means we're leaving a lot of money on the table, and it also that means that ripples out into our whole lives. We're shortchanging ourselves, we're shortchanging our families, we're shortchanging our cats and dogs, if those are our children, and all the beings in our lives. We're getting shortchanged because we're
Mm.
working too hard and we're not making enough money. And that's the piece that's really driven me to talk about pricing as a central message because I just see too many women, too many really, really good women burning out.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I noticed in your bio that you talk about coming to this work through personal experience. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience, like how this became real for you?
Sure. So, because I started when I was quite young, I was in my mid 20s when I started in business. I had never made a lot of money and I really didn't understand how to charge for my time. I'd always been an hourly employee and never made much. So when people started paying me for my services, I was like, oh my gosh, I can make that much in an hour. And I did the classic mistake that a lot of people do is I multiplied that times 40, which is not feasible. Like you can't physically bill 40 hours a week. You would,
Yeah.
you would be, you would die, or you would burn out really fast. And so for me, it was easy. It felt like easy money in the beginning. And then when I wanted to make it into more of a formal business, because I was a subcontractor when I started doing that kind of coaching work on job search is actually where I started. And so I was a subcontractor, which felt like I was into money. I was like, woohoo, I finally made some money. And then as I became a partner in the business and we started growing it, I had to really look at the structure of what I was doing differently.
Mhm.
And I undercharged terribly for a long, long, long time. But the more I talked to entrepreneurs, the more clients I had who were entrepreneurial and wanted to help them develop their consulting and coaching businesses, I realized that I was helping a lot more people with pricing than I even knew, like before I even knew it.
Mhm.
And I was talking about my own experiences, but then I started to say, there's a lot more to this. I need to actually learn. I need to learn more about this myself because I'm not charging enough. And that helped me kind of continue to perpetuate all of that in the work that I do now. And when I wrote my book, Launch, Grow, and Prosper as a Woman Solopreneur, which was published this year, I realized I had a lot to say about pricing. There's two whole chapters in the book about pricing, just on pricing.
Yeah.
And so, so it's a fun topic. It also is a really meaningful topic to me because I think it touches on so many pieces of our business.
Yeah. And it's not only about our business, it's really about the internal work because that's really the
Yeah,
foundation of the pricing, right? We have to
yeah,
believe that we're actually
absolutely.
worth something. Business value,
Right.
obviously, as a human, we know we're inherently worthy.
Right, because we can do the mechanics of, okay, how much money do I want to make this year, and go backwards in your calculations and figure out what your hourly rate is, and all you can do all of that. Those are the simple calculations, but then you have to add on your years of experience, your level of expertise, the results that you produce. That's the value add that we bring as particularly in service providers that isn't part of those equations. Whenever you see an actual equation for how do you set your rates, um, people leave out that piece of, but there's all this other value and worth piece that you're not talking about.
Mm-hmm. And so how do you deal with that, like with your clients? Tell me.
Well, a lot of it is helping people claim that level of expertise. So I was just talking to somebody yesterday, for example, and I've known her for a long time. She was a client of mine before when she was in job search, and has had a really successful 25-year career in nonprofit development, fundraising, really high level, big campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
And she went out on her own last year for her own business. And she was really struggling with her pricing. And what was really great is that when she was talking about negotiating salary, it was a lot easier for her than it was now as a business owner. And when I reminded her that yes, she's only been in business for quote 1 year, she brings 25 years of really high powered results to the work that she does. And when we talked about it from that perspective, I could see her face change and her body change. And she was sort of sitting up more, like kind of starting to embody it more in her heart and in her gut. And it was a great shift to see in somebody that I've known and respected for a long time. Just to see, oh, they're really, yeah, I really do need to charge more and I am worth it. And what's challenging for a lot of people when they start is that in that first couple of years, especially in coaching, counseling, consulting sorts of businesses, you really don't know what your area of expertise is. It's hard to know what your results are because you haven't done it enough.
Mm-hmm.
But after you've done it a couple of years, you can start to really pin down like, oh, I helped this organization go from here to here, or I helped this person go from here to here. And it's easier to start to see those patterns. And I think that's why pricing in the very beginning is so hard because we actually don't know how to talk about our expertise. And then as we go on, we forget to reevaluate, say, oh, right, I need to start talking about the results I produce. I just,
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that example of someone coming out of corporate, right? And they felt really tied to their results that they created within that role. But
yeah.
then somehow we have that disconnect that we forget our brain and all of our experience comes with us wherever we go.
Yeah, right, right. And I think that, I've seen the opposite happen where people leave corporate and then they go out and say, I can do all these things. But what they were forgetting is they used to have a whole staff that they delegated to. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen people, particularly in a controller and CPA kind of accounting level, who
Mm,
realized that they are capable of a lot of things, but they had a staff that did the entry and all that stuff, and they have to quickly build a team if they want to stay at the level that they're really capable of,
hmm
of the advising and the strategy level. So I
hmm
think that sometimes we forget, so there's both sides of it, right? We need to understand what are the results that I bring, that with the knowledge and experience that I bring, and what were
Yeah.
the results that I produced as part of my team. And I'm not separated from those, but if I don't have a team, I may not be able to make those kind of promises.
Yeah. Yeah. So talk me through how women can develop a pricing strategy that reflects their true value.
Oh, okay. So to me, it's a few parts. So one is understand what it actually takes to deliver the services that you provide, whether
Mm,
that is you're doing coaching with individuals, groups, courses, you're doing consulting, you're doing research, whatever it is you're doing. What does it cost you to deliver the service that you say you deliver?
mhm.
And that number is not necessarily your price. That actually might be quite a high number, but it just doesn't have to be your price. And then you add on the level of experience you bring, the level of expertise and kinds of results that we produce. What's the value of those results? So that's all, like I call that the raw data. And then you need to get big picture with your business and understand, how does this fit in? So, for example, it might cost me, I might have a value, for example, of a workshop that's $6,000 because of the amount of time it takes me to deliver that. But it's a workshop, so I'm going to deliver that to many people and probably multiple times. So I could choose to charge $6,000 per person, but I could also choose to say, I'm going to do the heavy lift on the development, and then I'm going to reuse that and and iterate that material over many times, and I'll make back that money kind of as an initial investment.
Hmm.
So if it's an introductory product, right, for example, and then you have higher level and you have even higher level. But the more individualized it becomes, the smaller the group, the more one-to-one it becomes, the higher your price needs to go. And that's understanding that that's the where does the service you're providing fit into the level of client and information and level of your time? How much personal individual time are you giving to that? So that's some of the components. And when you understand all of that, then you start to see, oh, that's why people charge $97 for a workshop. Like how do they get away with, how do they justify that price to themselves? Well, because it was probably an introductory course. It's probably something they've done many, 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 many times. And they're iterating rather than creating brand new. And if somebody is charging $10,000 for a 6-month program, well, it's probably because it's individual, it's one to one. There's
Yeah.
a lot of intensive, one to one work you do.
Hmm. Hmm. So is there an easy kind of way to think about that? Because I think the way I've always been pricing has kind of been what the market will bear and thinking about what others in my industry are doing and what I feel comfortable with charging. But obviously, there's not a lot of science in that and math. And you're talking about a lot more math. So,
Oh, so
what
yeah,
are,
so actually what you do is exactly what the vast majority of people do.
yeah.
They use what they consider what the market will bear. And here's a really good thing to remember about what the market will bear is if you're in a hyper local market, then what the market will bear has a lot of bearing on you because
Mm,
you're really competing with, if you're a retail store is selling something that three doors down sells that same thing, you need to be able to compete with that in terms of what the market will bear.
yeah.
If you're a service provider, for example, for the first 20 years of my business, I was very local. I really stayed right in Vermont. And then I started expanding outside of that. And I was always aware of, there were 3 or 4 other people in my community that were offering very similar kinds of, I mean, really direct competitors. I was always aware of what they were charging and how they were
Hmm.
structuring things because I had clients who were comparison shopping. I also had my ways of kind of, getting information from the community, kind of keeping into the buzz. And so I would adjust my prices accordingly. Now, the 2 people who were the most direct and most well-known competitors had about 10 years more experience than I did in my field. And so I was always aware that I like didn't want to charge more. But here's the thing is that I realized maybe 15 years ago that they were terribly undercharging for what they were way undercharging for what they
Yeah.
were doing. And so when I kept my pricing compared to in my competitive comparison, I didn't know what they were using to set their pricing. I wasn't really talking directly to them. I knew them. We were all friendly competitors, but I didn't get into detail about their pricing.
Yeah.
And when we use that, what the market will bear or what my competitors are charging, we don't always know what they're using as their basis for pricing.
Mm,
Now, if you're doing business that's outside your hyperlocal market, like if you're online and you're doing work nationally, internationally, well, then
hmm.
what is the market, right? What can it bear?
Yeah.
So it's a wider conversation. And I think actually that's what gives service providers a little more freedom to start to price according to what they really see that they're worth rather than what they think what their competitors are charging or what they think they can get away with or what people can't afford. Because when we talk about what people can afford, we're trying to read their minds. And I don't know what they can afford. I mean, who
Right.
knows what
Getting
people
our
can
hands in their
afford?
pocketbook.
Right. Or in there, there's all kinds of ways that people will find resources if it's appropriate for them. And
Yeah.
I never encourage somebody to go into debt to work with me. But I also know that it's an investment, just like your services. It's an investment into
Mm-hmm.
to the work we do. I'm not looking for somebody to, pay me $1,200 a month for the rest of their lives. It's like
Mm-hmm.
there's a set time when you're doing some heavy investment, and then there might be some retooling, over
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So do you advise different pricing for like different stages of business? Like for
Mm,
like a brand new business might be this kind of pricing strategy. And then once, like you said, you know what your value is and you have results to prove, then your pricing goes to a different level.
somewhat, somewhat. So
Hmm.
it depends on the individual because they might be bringing a lot of professional experience into their field. Maybe
Hmm.
they've never run their own consulting business doing that, but they bring an incredible wealth of knowledge. So, for example, when I was 26 years old and started in business, I didn't know a lot. I mean, I thought I knew a lot, but and so in 25 years later, when I look back, I think, oh my gosh, who was I trying to say those things to? I mean, I think what I did worked. It helped people because it was mostly writing resumes and cover letters and helping people apply to jobs, which wasn't really that hard. And it made sense. See, that was the thing that world made sense to me. Like
Hmm.
I understood that in a way that a lot of people that came to me didn't.
Yeah.
But if I had been, working with for an outplacement firm, for example, if I was an employee with an outplacement firm for 25 years or 15 years, and then I decided to just really do my own clients, well, I would have been bringing all of that experience with
Hmm.
me to
Hmm.
my business. So I really want to know what's your background and how did you come to being an entrepreneur before I start to say, well, if you're in your first few years, you should be charging this.
Mm.
And I do give people a little bit of idea of like, if you charge too little, people won't take you seriously. So
Hmm.
don't take that route. Don't say, "Oh, I'll just charge really low so that I get clients," because people actually won't hire you if you don't charge enough.
Yeah. And I think there's a mental thing that happens when we know we're undercharging. Mentally, oftentimes what I see is we will underperform,
Yes.
right? And so if we, like you said earlier, if we're embodying that level of service and the results we want to create and we know we can create for our clients and we charge accordingly, then we live into that, right?
We step up, right. And
Yeah.
pricing to me is a muscle. It's like any muscle you're trying to develop. In the beginning, you do some things that seem, you're only lifting 5-pound weights, because it's kind of what you can do. You can do, 15 reps and then you get a little stronger and a little stronger and a little stronger. I broke my wrist a couple of years ago now, and I had to do all kinds of PT to rebuild my whole arm.
Mm,
And it was amazing to me that just a couple of pounds felt like a lot in the beginning. And then and the more I did it, the stronger my arm got. And I also know, interestingly, is when I start to feel the tendonitis in my wrist, is because I'm not doing enough muscle development in my bicep.
mm,
And that's a really interesting thing to look at too, is that if you don't consistently develop and use that muscle around analyzing your pricing, understanding it, adjusting it, doing that, then you sort of atrophies. And all of a sudden 5 years have gone by and you haven't raised your prices and you're getting resentful about what you're charging. You're not performing like you said. We're not stepping up in the way that we
hmm.
know how to.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I told you my story. I didn't raise my prices for probably the first 10 years in my business.
Yeah.
And then when I did, it was my clients all congratulated me. Nobody, because I thought, of course, right, I'm going to raise my prices and then everyone's going to quit and I will have no
Right.
business. So
Right.
but they ended up congratulating me and happily paying the higher prices. And so
Yeah.
that was a really great learning experience for me. So talk about that a little bit. Like, how do you advise that we think about price increases? Do we just make it something consist that we're always
Oh,
doing,
yeah.
or what do you
I
advise?
I would suggest, here's what I suggest every year, like this time of year. This is a perfect time of year to do it. Look at your pricing. Look at all your programs, your offers, whatever it is. And if all you do is one-to-one coaching, great. You probably have some packages in that. You probably have some ways that you do that. If you do more complex training, consulting kind of work, then just start to look and see, is it working? Like, was it really costing? Right. And then
Hmm.
do some of that value add. But look at it every year. You do not have to raise your prices every year. One of the things you might do is look at your pricing. And for example, for a long time, I've had a program that was um, like 10 to 12 sessions, right? And um, I had a price on that. And for a long time, I just sort of bumped the price up and bumped the price up. And then I realized, you know what? I don't really think we need 12 or 13 sessions. I think I could do this in 10 because I was actually, my expertise had increased. I was getting to things
Mm.
faster.
Hmm.
So for a couple of years, I didn't change the price, but I changed the number of sessions. And then I decided I wanted to add some bonuses onto that. And bonuses are a nice way to add a little extra on, but that doesn't necessarily affect the price, and people appreciate bonuses.
Hmm.
So I played around with what it is I offered rather than how much it was. And you might decide that you have a 6 session course that you teach that you could really do in 4. You could change, you could charge the same exact price, but you've just gotten better, cleaner, more focused in the material, and you're able to do it in 4, and then all of a sudden it snaps together.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And so that brings up for me as I talk to a lot of women about dollars for hours and
Mm.
versus dollars for value, right? So I could hear someone say, well, I don't want to decrease the amount of sessions or classes or time that I spend because that's what people are paying for. And what would you say to that?
Well, actually, people are paying for the results, really. This is where I started to see that it didn't take me 13 sessions to get to the place that I felt like we needed to get to. I could do 10. And one of the things I do more, I find more of is a little bit more email and messaging exchanging going on, because sometimes there's a quick question that doesn't need to wait for an appointment. And I
Mhm.
don't mind that. That's part of the bonus, right? Is that in between sessions you can ask questions and interact with me. Now, if it's going to take me more than 5 or 10 minutes to answer your question, I'm going to probably say, let's get on the phone or let's get on Zoom and let's have an appointment.
Mhm.
But that's a way for them to get a quick answer and not have it be a whole session where we feel like we have to fill the time.
Mhm.
In fact, if we say it's 10 hours as opposed to 10 sessions, then we're also holding ourselves to filling an hour. And I'll tell you what, as soon as you say it's 10 hours and not 10 sessions, your client is doing the clock. Oh, we only met
The
for
math.
45 minutes. Yeah,
Yeah.
we only met for 45 minutes today. I have 15 minutes extra, so I'll use that some other time. No, maybe you actually got to where they needed to be in 45 minutes.
Yeah, and I think the question is knowing, what does my client value? Do they value the result or do they value the minutes, right? Because
Right.
if I can go to a personal trainer, for example, and they say, I can get you to your, beach body in 5 minutes and not 5 days, I'm all in.
I'm all for it. Yeah, I'm all
I'll
in.
pay
Right.
double.
Right. And that's why, in fact, weight training exercise is a great example of this. There's all these methods now, 10 minutes a day, 7 minutes a day. They're trying to get us down to this, like, what's the essential to
Yeah.
get the result we want?
Yeah. And I think that's very valuable. And so,
It
and
is. And it gets out of that conversation of my billable hours, for example. It's more like, well, what's the number of clients that I have, and how am I how is my what my price how do I structure my pricing so that I'm not beholden to an hourly filling a certain number of billable hours. Might be
Mm-hmm.
having a certain number of billable sessions or percentage of your time being client service as opposed to business management.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, what would be like 3 steps that anyone listening could take, whether it's thinking about their pricing, like 3 things they could do to really know how to price? And if they're pricing, like you said, we're in this time where it would be a really great time to assess prices. Like, what are 3 things that we can do to know if we're pricing correctly?
I would say probably the majority of people could just automatically raise their prices 5% without even doing anything. Just give yourself a 5% boost. And
Mm,
if you have a hard time saying it, it's okay. It's a muscle, right? You'll say it a few times. There's a few people that'll walk away because you weren't convinced of it yet. You'll say it a few more times, and all of a sudden it won't even feel like a big deal, and everybody just says yes. So that's one thing. That's an easy thing. And the other is, I think, is to really do some good, like take apart your services, use your wall. I'm a post-it queen. I've always got bags of post-its with me. I take apart things all the time. I write the components of a program and take them apart on post-it notes and put them up and see, is this the order they need to be in? Does this the length they need to be? Is this the content? Is there some piece that I can take out that isn't really, it's fun, it's nice, but it isn't essential?
mm,
And start to tighten up what you do so that you're getting people to their results more effectively, not so much efficiently, effectively. And then start to look at, is this an introductory service? Is this an intermediary? Is this an advanced? And how do I want to differentiate my pricing accordingly?
mm,
Introductory means it's one to many, or I'm trying to sell many of them. Intermediate is one to a few, or I'm only selling a limited number. One to one is I'm probably have some premium clients I'm working with, and they're getting all, when I'm with them, they have my entire attention. If you can distinguish your services in those categories, it'll also help you start to think about how to set pricing to get folks in the door and then move them up into those other levels.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So your recommendation is having services or packages or containers in different
Yeah.
steps, like different ways of engaging with you to kind of.
Yeah, too many of us have the $3,000, $5,000 package and we don't have anything below. Or
Mhm,
if we do, it's always custom and we have to kind of scramble to, if you always have a few things in your back pocket. Like I have a program that's kind of my basic individual work. And there are people that really don't need all of that. Like I can tell when we're talking, they really don't need all of that. Now I don't promote the smaller one. Like I don't have it anywhere on my website. But if I'm talking to you and I realize, just like there's a few essential, really big, just essential pieces that I think would make a big difference, I'll say, I have a smaller program, but I bring it up. It means I
mhm,
can downsell. So if I can't downsell to anything, then there's only the one or more. But if I always have a couple of things that I can say, hey, I run a group, or oh, I'm doing a course on that coming up next month. You might really like that. Or I have some free resources on my website here, or I
mhm.
sell a book on that. You can have ways that you can help people access your knowledge, your expertise, without necessarily being one to one all the time.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. I love that. So in terms of thinking about attracting those ideal clients, what's your best advice for us in bringing in those ideal clients that value the work that we do?
Well, I think get really clear about it. So I'll talk about for a long time I didn't understand really what having a niche was. I actually
Mm.
thought that niching meant like you were asking me to cut off limbs of my body, because I felt like I had, I had a lot to offer.
It's that
Um,
painful too.
right. And so when you niche down to you're really clear, you're crystal clear on who your ideal clients are. It's much easier to price, it's much easier to create services for them because those are the folks you want walking in the door. And remember, you can take on other clients that don't fit that. There's other folks who come to you
Hmm.
because they think, oh my gosh, Melissa, you're so great. I want to work with you. And you're like, okay, yeah. You're not going to say no. But if you talk to your ideal clients, right,
Hmm.
speak to them, that's all your marketing message, your packages, or all of that is targeted toward them. Other folks will come along and want to be part of the party, but you'll be attracting more and more of the folks that are really your ideal. I heard this really great statistic yesterday that at any given time, only 1% of your ideal clients are in a position to buy.
Hmm.
That was really interesting. So there's a lot of richness in that.
Yeah.
First of all, even though you might be my ideal client, you don't either see you don't need my services, you're not in a position to act on it now, there's no urgency, there's lots of reasons why you may not act on it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that some other time you won't be. So when we're talking to our ideal clients over and over again, when they are ready to buy, they choose you.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I love that because I always think about that as like my tomato garden, right? Like you plant your tomatoes and they begin to grow and they sprout. And that whole time we're watering them, fertilizing them, making sure there's no weeds. We're taking care of them, but they're all going to ripen at different times. And
Right.
so we have to, yeah, continually be nurturing and offering value to all of them.
And if you start it from seed to, to the first ripe tomato, which for in Vermont, that's right around the 1st of August. That's like from March or April to August. That's
Yeah.
a long time to take care of a plant that's giving you nothing. Nothing, I mean, tangible, right? That's tangible.
Yeah.
And so, that's months and months. And I think that's also part of that commitment to speaking to your ideal client because when they start to come in, it comes in richly. It's like the tomato plant. A few start to ripen, then a few more, and then a few more. And the next thing you know, you got buckets of tomatoes in the kitchen and you're trying to make sauce.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what are your top tips for converting those folks into loyal customers without that icky, pushy, salesy feeling?
Mm. It's about relationship. It's about staying engaged. I've had a really interesting, it's been a really great fall for me because um I have I did a lot of strategy change to my business at the beginning of the year, and I put out all kinds of information, all kinds of, social media, email marketing, just, all kinds of stuff, right? All this promotion.
Hmm.
And it just felt like crickets for so long. So long. And then this fall, because it's conference season, I've been going to various in-person events, which I do think that in-person events are so essential for that. And I have people been walking up to me saying, "Oh, I was so looking forward to seeing you. I was hoping you'd be here. I want to talk to you about. Oh, I've been watching, I've been following everything you're talking about. I'm loving it. I'm just trying to figure out when I can sign up." It's like, okay. So, what I do is if somebody says that, you just say, okay, well, let's look at our calendars right now and let's get a time and talk.
Yeah.
Because even if they don't buy, I want them to understand what's available. So it's all
Hmm.
the relationship.
Hmm.
I'm a firm believer in our nurturing our relationships through our network. And whether that's because you can't just do it through social media, right? Because social media really is just another form of networking, but
Hmm.
it's quite impersonal
Hmm.
because it's you're not physically there. So you've got to do the showing up in person, the connecting, finding the groups that are both your collegial groups as well as your target market groups, and all of that starts to build. And if you're doing that on many, you really have several fronts of interacting. I know this makes some people their skin start to crawl when I say several fronts because they're like, I don't have any more time. but it's about quality. It's about
Yeah.
quality, not quantity.
Yeah.
Quality posts, quality connections, quality groups, and make sure every single time you go to a live event that you walk out of there with at least one appointment booked with somebody from that group. And my all-time record was 9.
Wow.
And I was like, I almost couldn't walk out the door before I was literally getting my coat and walking out, and somebody said, Marky, I've been waiting to talk to you all night. I wanted to introduce you to. And then I had another appointment. I
Wow.
got in my car and I thought, what just happened? But it's because of all those, all those relationships, all those ways that I just kept interacting and showing up and showing up and showing up and being myself
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and being of service, being helpful.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
hard when you're first starting to feel like, oh, I'm supposed to just show up everywhere and give everything away because that's what it feels like. But no, you're putting deposits into the Goodwill Bank,
Mm-hmm.
and then you get to start to withdraw them.
And it always comes back to you in
It
ways you
does. It
probably don't
always comes,
expect.
yeah, it comes back in the most amazing. I really, truly, this fall, it was lifted my heart when I had people come to me and say, oh, I've been following what you've been doing online. I'm just loving it. And I want to talk to you. Like, I, I wouldn't have known that otherwise. Now, I'm going to turn off my camera for just a second because it's kind of getting blurry. There you go. I think it's a little sharper.
Yeah.
So I would never have known that they were watching it because nobody commented, right? I get all these
Mhm.
impressions, but what does that even mean?
Yeah. Well,
Social
and
media is just so disheartening.
yeah, and I've heard that really is a trend where people are watching and taking it all in and loving it and not at all engaging or commenting or any of that. And so that is knowing that, because that's very typical. I hear that all the time, and from the experts that I follow, like that's the statistics are showing that too. And so it's such a great reminder that, they're just all those tomatoes, they're out there. And even if we don't think they're growing, they really actually are growing, even if we
And
can't see them.
to take the tomato plant further, it's really great is if you're a gardener. I'm a big time gardener.
Yes.
I don't put tomatoes into my compost because tomato seeds last for freaking ever, right? If you throw a bunch of tomatoes into your compost next year, you're going to have tomatoes all over your garden, little baby tomatoes.
Yeah.
And that's a great reminder, though, is because all of those things you've done, all those deposits into the Goodwill community, Goodwill Bank, they don't go away. People remember. People
Hmm.
remember something that you did for them that was a kindness or a generosity for years, and you have long forgotten you even talked to them,
Hmm.
and you said something that made a difference to them, and they remember you. And so
Hmm.
when they're ready to act, they call you.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
remember, 1% of your ideal client base is ready to buy right now.
Hmm. Yeah. And I love to even have a little flip on that, to think that your work is always in demand, and that
Yes.
all that demand is already all around you,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Like it was
Yeah.
wild. Yeah, go ahead.
It's just waiting, right? It's just
Yeah.
waiting. And because we aren't clear about who our ideal clients are, and I
Hmm.
know you do that work with your folks so much, is about let's get real clear about who you're talking to so that you can talk to them more effectively.
Hmm.
When we don't know that, we're just doing buckshot. And people they don't know what we do. They actually don't know. They don't know how to access what we do. They
Yeah.
think we're wonderful, they think we're smart, they think all kinds of great things about us, but they don't quite know what door to walk in.
Hmm.
And for you, it's real clear, like marketing. Let's just talk about that. Let's open that door because it touches everything.
Yeah.
Pricing touches everything, right?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's such a great reminder that in all of our marketing, if we just consider that all of the clients that we have capacity for are already all around us. And so in everything that we are doing, we need to talk to them and let them know what we're doing, how we do it, and how they can take that first step.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So good. So, my final question for you, since you have been an entrepreneur for 3 decades, which is so admirable, we know from statistics that most businesses don't last that long. And so you are immensely successful in the work that you're doing. And having been an entrepreneur for so long, what would be a couple pieces of advice for us that would love to grow and have our businesses for 30 plus years also?
That's really good. Don't try to figure it all out in the beginning. Allow yourself to grow, because particularly for those of us who are solopreneur service providers, as we grow and develop and evolve, our business grows and develops and evolves. And in fact, I've always worked with entrepreneurs throughout my whole career,
Mhm.
and it wasn't until the last 5 years that I said, they're going to be my primary audience. Like they're going to be, I'm going to just talk to entrepreneurs. And so, because I've always worked with them, I have a long history of working with entrepreneurs. But I never just said, I'm going to just talk to entrepreneurs. So I've had other focuses in my business. And all of that has helped me evolve and change because, I get bored or I get tired of that, or I realize I went after something and I caught a big fish and it wasn't really a fish I wanted to eat anymore. And so I went after something else. And I allowed myself to do that
Mhm.
because, the truth is, if in 10 years you meet me, I may not be talking to solopreneurs anymore. I mean, I might still work with them, but it may not be my primary focus. I'll be a much more mature woman then. I just turned 60 this year, so 10 years from now.
Awesome.
But see, I love entrepreneurs, and I've loved all the things I've done, all the people that I've worked with so far. I've loved when I worked with them, and then it changed for me. I've also changed my business name 3 times. And so, it's part of I grew out of that business name. It didn't fit me
Mhm.
anymore. And so I evolved into something else. I think that allowing yourself, so many of us, like, people try to um, create a name that somehow, gives them a catchy URL. It's like, yeah, it'll work for the first 4 or 5 years, and then you're going to change, and that URL doesn't work anymore.
Mhm.
You might need to have something that's a little more organic. There's this one business locally that the name of their business is We Clean Heat Pumps. This is a great example of a company name, okay? The name of their company is We Clean Heat Pumps. Real clear about what they do, right? Real clear, okay? But they've grown and evolved, and they do more than heat pumps. They do other things now. And every once in a while I hear the name of their business, it's We Clean Heat Pumps and they'll add something. Which is sort of fun. But like that's a great example of creating a business name that was so hyper focused that it didn't allow for them to grow.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's allowing your business to grow with you
Yeah,
over those decades and
yeah.
not making that a problem. I feel like so many of us, we go into one thing and we have to think that's going to be our one thing forever. And it's okay that our business grows and evolves and as we grow and evolve. And yeah, I
Yeah,
love
and the
that.
more we learn, the more we start to make choices about what we don't want to do. In the beginning, you do stuff that you're like, I never knew I was going to be doing this. And then you realize 5 years later, I don't ever want to do that again. So you stop talking about it. That's, by
Hmm.
the way, that's number one, to stop. If you don't want to provide a service to anybody, stop talking about that service. Never mention it again. And so people stop hiring you for it. But yeah, we're afraid to like we see people who've been in business for a long time, or we see bigger businesses and we think they have figured it all out.
Hmm.
And they have not, right? I mean, I just love the story of how Sandra came up with eWomen Network, right? The
Hmm.
name of the organization. That it was not about entrepreneur. I mean, it was sort of about entrepreneur, but it was about as in electronic, like online.
Yeah.
And then she was able to take the name, fortunately, because it had enough flexibility and make new meaning out of it. But she had a very clear idea of what that was going to be. And it wasn't that at all. She's like, I can't even imagine the transformation the business has
Hmm.
gone through in 25
Hmm.
years.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's so critical just to be open to that, right? And to
Yeah.
just be open and allow it, because it
Yeah.
does make the entrepreneurial journey more fun. And if we can explore those passions and those desires and those people that we want to work with, and we really land on things that light us up, and that's what it's
Yeah.
about.
I think being an entrepreneur is one of the most amazing um, explorations of the self.
Mm,
There's so many parts of yourself you have to confront and work with. This is really why I've always loved working with entrepreneurs, because it's just you, like, it's just you. Like, there's no, I mean, you can have helpers, you can have staff, you can have a whole office full of people, but when you go out there and talk about what you do, it's you. It's not this company that you work for that you may not work for in 3 or 4 years. And it's confronting. It's also incredibly enlivening. It's an opportunity for self-development and self-growth and self-exploration. It's like it's some of the best therapy you can do for yourself, right?
that we never intended.
Right, right. Because you gotta deal with all those demons and all that. I mean, just holy cow.
Yeah.
It's amazing what you have to confront every day as an entrepreneur. Really, it's truly amazing.
Yeah. Well, I'm so comforted in hearing that from you, that it's been at it for so long, and that those of us that feel that and struggle with that, that it's just part of the journey. I love that.
Yeah, yeah. Mostly try to do your best to keep your sense of humor and keep sitting up every day. It'll be it better.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank
Yeah,
you so much, Marky.
yeah.
This has been such a great conversation. I so appreciate your time and your expertise and your wisdom and your generosity being with us today. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Lots of fun. And I look forward to next time.
Yes, me too.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.